Hello, horror lover. Are you ready for a long night of nightmares? Before we begin, I want to ask you to subscribe to the channel, and especially leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I'd love to know. Click the like button, all of this because the musty scent of aged wood and forgotten treasures filled my nostrils as I stepped into Madame Lenore's antique emporium. The bell above the door chimed softly, announcing my arrival to the empty shop. Dust motes danced in the shafts of late afternoon sunlight streaming through the grimy windows, giving the cluttered space an otherworldly atmosphere. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing slightly in the cramped store. "Anyone here?" Silence greeted me, broken only by the steady tick-tock of numerous clocks scattered throughout the room. I made my way carefully through the maze of furniture, my eyes darting from one curiosity to another. Victorian chairs with faded upholstery sat next to Art Deco lamps while shelves groaned under the weight of porcelain figurines and tarnished silver. As I rounded a corner, my breath caught in my throat. There, nestled on a shelf between two weathered books, sat the most exquisite music box I had ever seen. Its dark, polished wood gleamed in the dim light, intricate carvings adorning its surface. Delicate golden filigree traced patterns across the lid, culminating in a small keyhole. My hands trembled as I lifted the box, feeling its surprising weight and the smoothness of its finish. The carvings seemed to shift under my fingers, telling tales of distant lands and long-forgotten melodies. I traced the outline of a tree, its branches reaching toward stylized clouds, and felt a shiver run down my spine. "I see you found our most intriguing piece," a raspy voice said from behind me. I nearly dropped the box in surprise, whirling around to find myself face to face with an elderly woman. Her silver hair was piled atop her head in an intricate bun, and her eyes, magnified by thick glasses, seemed to pierce right through me. "I'm sorry," I stammered. "I didn't hear you come in. Are you Madame Lenore?" The woman's thin lips curved into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Indeed I am, young man. And you are?" "Daniel," I replied, extending my hand. "Daniel Forrester. I'm an antique collector, and I couldn't help but notice this beautiful music box. Could you tell me more about it?" Madame Lenore ignored my outstretched hand, her gaze fixed on the box I held. "Ah, yes. That piece has quite a history. It came to me from an old plantation house in New Orleans. The family was eager to be rid of it, though they wouldn't say why." I turned the box over in my hands, admiring the craftsmanship. "It's incredible. Do you know how old it is?" "Older than it looks," Madame Lenore replied cryptically. She reached out a gnarled hand, her fingers hovering just above the box's surface without touching it. "They say it was crafted by a master artisan in the early 18th century, commissioned by a wealthy plantation owner as a gift for his young bride." My excitement grew. If the box was truly that old and in such pristine condition, it could be worth a small fortune. "Does it still play?" I asked eagerly. The shopkeeper's eyes gleamed with an unsettling intensity as she fixed me with a stern look. "It does, but I must warn you, Mr. Forrester. Never wind the box fully. Its melody is potent." I chuckled nervously, unsure if she was being serious or if this was some sort of sales tactic. "What do you mean by potent?" Madame Lenore's voice dropped to a whisper. "Legend has it that the plantation owner's bride fell into a deep sleep upon hearing the box's lullaby. She never woke up. Over the years, others who have wound the box too far have suffered similar fates." A chill ran down my spine despite the warmth of the shop. I knew it was just a story, probably concocted to add mystique to the item, but something in the old woman's tone made me uneasy. "I'm sure it's just a coincidence," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "How much are you asking for it?" Madame Lenore named a price that, while steep, was far less than I had expected for such a rare piece. I couldn't believe my luck. "I'll take it," I said quickly before she could change her mind. As I paid for the music box, Madame Lenore's hand shot out, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. "Remember my warning, Mr. Forrester. Some melodies are best left unplayed. I nodded, eager to leave the oppressive atmosphere of the shop. As I stepped out into the fading daylight, the music box tucked safely in a bag, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just made a terrible mistake. The drive home seemed to take forever, my mind racing with thoughts of the mysterious music box. I couldn't wait to show Sarah, my wife. She had always indulged my passion for antiques, even if she didn't quite understand it. As I pulled into our driveway, I saw Sarah tending to her roses in the front yard. Her face lit up as I approached, and I felt a surge of love for this woman who had stood by me through thick and thin. "Hey, honey," she called out, pushing a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "Find anything interesting today?" I held up the bag triumphantly. "You won't believe what I found. It's incredible." Sarah laughed, her green eyes twinkling. "Another dusty old thing for your collection?" "This is different," I insisted, leading her inside. "Wait until you see it." In our living room, I carefully removed the music box from its wrappings. Sarah gasped as she saw it, her fingers hovering over the intricate carvings. "Oh, Daniel," she breathed. "It's beautiful. Where did you find it?" I recounted my visit to Madame Lenore's shop, describing the eccentric old woman and her cryptic warnings. Sarah listened intently, her expression growing more concerned as I spoke. "Don't you think that's a bit creepy?" she asked when I had finished. "A music box that puts people to sleep?" I waved off her concerns. "It's just a story, Sarah, probably made up to make the box seem more valuable. But even without the legend, it's an incredible piece." Sarah bit her lip, a habit she had when she was worried. "I don't know, Daniel. Maybe we should be careful with it." "Of course we'll be careful," I assured her. "But don't you want to hear it play? Just a little?" Before she could protest, I gently turned the key on the back of the box. The resistance grew as I wound it, and I remembered Madame Lenore's warning not to wind it fully. Deciding to err on the side of caution, I stopped about halfway. As I opened the lid, the most hauntingly beautiful melody I had ever heard filled our living room. It was a lullaby, sweet and melancholic, with notes that seemed to hang in the air long after they should have faded. I felt my eyelids growing heavy, the music wrapping around me like a warm blanket. Shaking off the drowsiness, I turned to Sarah. "Isn't it a The words died in my throat as I saw her eyes flutter closed, her body swaying slightly. "Sarah," I called, panic rising in my voice. "Sarah, wake up." She didn't respond, slowly collapsing onto the couch. I rushed to her side, shaking her gently at first, then more vigorously as she remained unresponsive. "Sarah, please," I begged, tears forming in my eyes. "This isn't funny. Wake up." But she didn't wake up. Her breathing was slow and steady, as if she were in a deep sleep, but nothing I did could rouse her. With trembling hands, I called for an ambulance, my mind reeling with the implications of what had just happened. As the paramedics rushed Sarah to the hospital, I couldn't help but stare at the now silent music box. Madame Lenore's warnings echoed in my head, and I realized with growing horror that the legend might be more than just a story. In the sterile brightness of the emergency room, I paced back and forth, the steady beep of machines monitoring Sarah's vital signs providing a grim counterpoint to my racing thoughts. Doctors came and went, their baffled expressions telling me more than their carefully chosen words. "Mr. Forrester," one of them finally said, his face etched with concern. "I'm afraid we're at a loss. Your wife's vital signs are stable, but she's in a state of deep unconsciousness that we can't explain. It's unlike any coma we've seen before." I sank into a chair, my head in my hands. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The doctor's hand on my shoulder was meant to be comforting, but it felt like a lead weight. "We'll run more tests, consult with specialists, but I have to be honest with you. This is uncharted territory for us." As I watched Sarah's motionless form through the glass partition, guilt and fear warred within me. What had I done? And more importantly, how could I undo it? Little did I know, This was just the beginning of a nightmare that would consume not only my life but the lives of everyone in our small town. The antique music box, with its beautiful melody and dark secrets, had set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything I thought I knew about reality, love, and the power of an ancient curse. The rhythmic beeping of medical equipment filled the sterile hospital room, a constant reminder of Sarah's unnatural sleep. I sat by her bedside, my hand gently clasping hers, willing her to wake up. The soft morning light filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across her peaceful face. "Sarah, please," I whispered, my voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "If you can hear me, squeeze my hand, just give me a sign." But there was nothing. No flutter of eyelids, no twitch of fingers. Just the steady rise and fall of her chest and the unwavering readout on the monitors. A soft knock on the door startled me from my vigil. Dr. Amelia Chen, the neurologist assigned to Sarah's case, entered the room, her face a mask of professional concern. "Mr. Forrester," she said gently, "may I have a word with you?" I nodded, reluctantly letting go of Sarah's hand and following Dr. Chen into the hallway. "I've gone over all of Sarah's test results," she began, her dark eyes meeting mine. "MRI, EEG, blood work, everything. Physically, there's nothing wrong with her. It's as if..." "As if what?" I prompted, dreading the answer. "Doctor," Chen sighed, rubbing her temples. "It's as if she's simply sleeping, Mr. Forrester. But it's a sleep so deep that nothing we've tried can wake her. I've never seen anything like it." Guilt gnawed at me as I watched Sarah's motionless form through the window. The steady beep of machines was my only comfort, a rhythmic assurance that she was still with us, if only in body. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "We'll keep monitoring her, try some experimental treatments. But I have to be honest with you. We're in uncharted territory here." I nodded, unable to form words around the lump in my throat. As Dr. Chen walked away, I leaned against the cool hospital wall, closing my eyes against the harsh fluorescent lights. How could I have been so foolish? The music box, Madame Lenore's warnings, it all seemed like a distant nightmare now. My phone buzzed in my pocket, jolting me back to reality. It was a text from my neighbor, Tom. "Hey, Daniel. Heard about Sarah. Is everything okay? Let me know if you need anything." Tom had been our neighbor for years, a friendly face always ready with a bad joke or a helping hand. I typed out a quick reply thanking him for his concern and promising to keep him updated. As I hit send, a commotion down the hall caught my attention. Nurses were rushing into a room, their urgent voices carrying through the otherwise quiet corridor. Curiosity got the better of me and I found myself moving closer, catching snippets of conversation. "Just like the other one. Won't wake up. Call Dr. Chen immediately." My blood ran cold. Could it be? Another case like Sarah's? I spent the rest of the day in a daze, alternating between sitting with Sarah and pacing the halls, eavesdropping on conversations and piecing together bits of information. By evening, my suspicions were confirmed. 3 more people had been admitted with the same mysterious symptoms as Sarah. As I drove home that night, my mind raced with possibilities. Could it be some sort of virus? An environmental toxin? Or was it truly connected to the music box, as impossible as that seemed? The house felt empty and oppressive without Sarah. I walked into the living room, my eyes immediately drawn to the antique music box sitting innocently on the mantel. Its intricate carvings seemed to mock me in the dim light. My neighbor Tom's curiosity about the music box turned to horror as he too succumbed to its spell before I could stop him. The doorbell rang, startling me out of my dark thoughts. I opened the door to find Tom standing there, a casserole dish in his hands and concern etched on his face. "Hey, Daniel," he said, forcing a smile. "I thought you might not be up for cooking, so I brought over some of Carol's famous lasagna." I managed a weak smile of my own. "Thanks, Tom. That's..." That's really thoughtful of you guys. I invited him in, grateful for the company despite my exhaustion. As Tom set the dish down in the kitchen, his eyes wandered to the living room, landing on the music box. Wow, he said, moving closer to examine it. That's quite a piece. Is it new? I felt a surge of panic. Tom, don't... But it was too late. His hand was already on the lid, lifting it open. The haunting melody filled the room once more, its notes hanging in the air like a tangible presence. It's beautiful, Tom murmured, his eyes growing heavy. Where? I watched in horror as Tom's eyes fluttered closed and he crumpled to the floor. The music continued to play, filling the room with its eerie lullaby. No, I cried, rushing to Tom's side. I shook him violently, desperately trying to wake him, but it was no use. He was as deeply asleep as Sarah. With shaking hands, I called 911, my voice cracking as I explained the situation to the dispatcher. As I waited for the ambulance, I paced the room, my eyes continually drawn to the now closed music box. What had I unleashed? The next few days passed in a blur of sirens, frantic phone calls, and sleepless nights. News of the mysterious sleeping sickness spread through our small town like wildfire, causing panic and confusion. I sat in my living room, the TV droning in the background, reporting on the growing crisis. The news anchor's voice was tense as she delivered the latest update. The number of victims affected by what authorities are calling the Somnus epidemic has risen to 27. Health officials are baffled by the condition, which causes victims to fall into a deep, unresponsive sleep. The CDC has been called in to investigate. I muted the TV, unable to bear any more. The weight of guilt pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe. I knew I should come forward, tell someone about the music box. But who would believe me? And what if they took it away before I could figure out how to wake Sarah and the others? My phone buzzed with a text from Carol, Tom's wife. Any news? The doctors still don't know what's wrong with him. I'm scared, Daniel. I stared at the message, my thumbs hovering over the keyboard. What could I possibly say to her? How could I explain that her husband was in a coma because of me? Because of a cursed antique I had brought into our lives? Frantic calls flooded the local news station as reports of mysterious comas spread through our small town like wildfire. The tension in the air was palpable, fear and confusion gripping everyone. I found myself standing in front of the music box again, its polished surface reflecting the dim light of the room. I clutched it to my chest, torn between destroying it and hoping it held the key to waking the victims. What are you? I whispered to the box. What do you want from us? Only silence answered me, the box's secrets locked away behind its ornate exterior. I knew I should hand it over to the authorities, let them study it, and hopefully find a cure. But a nagging voice in the back of my mind whispered that they wouldn't understand, that they might destroy our only chance of waking the victims. The weight of responsibility crushed me as I realized I had unleashed an ancient evil upon my community. Lives were being destroyed, families torn apart, and it was all because of my curiosity and carelessness. I sank to the floor, the music box still clutched in my arms, and let out a sob that seemed to come from the very depths of my soul. The enormity of what I had done, the lives I had ruined, crashed over me like a tidal wave. As I sat there, lost in my grief and guilt, a new determination began to form. I couldn't undo what I had done, but I could try to make it right. Somehow, someway, I would find a way to break this curse and wake the victims. I stood up, wiping the tears from my face, and placed the music box back on the mantel. Its intricate carving seemed to shift in the fading light, as if acknowledging the silent pact I had made. I'll fix this, I promised Sarah, Tom, and all the other victims. Whatever it takes, I'll find a way to bring you back. With that vow, I turned to my computer and began to search. There had to be answers out there somewhere. Legends, myths, anything that could shed light on the music box's origins and its power. As the night deepened around me, I delved into a world of occult lore and forgotten history. desperate for any clue that might lead to a cure. Little did I know that my search for answers would take me down a dark and dangerous path, one that would challenge everything I thought I knew about reality and force me to confront the true nature of sacrifice and love. The Somnus epidemic was just the beginning, and the true test of my resolve was yet to come. As dawn broke, casting long shadows across my cluttered desk, I realized that the journey to save Sarah and the others had only just begun. The cursed music box had set in motion events that would change not only my life, but the lives of everyone in our town. And I was the only one who could stop it, if I could find the courage to face the darkness that lay ahead. The soft glow of my computer screen illuminated the darkened living room, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Empty coffee cups littered my desk, testament to the sleepless nights that had blurred into days as I scoured the internet for any trace of the music box's history. My eyes burned from the constant strain, but I couldn't stop. Not when Sarah and so many others lay in hospital beds, trapped in an unnatural slumber. I rubbed my temples, trying to ward off the impending headache. The cursor blinked mockingly on the search bar, each failed query feeling like another nail in the coffin of my hope. But I had to keep trying. I owed it to Sarah, to Tom, to all the victims of this cursed melody. As I typed in yet another combination of keywords, antique music box, curse New Orleans, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Dr. Chen's name flashed on the screen, sending a jolt of anxiety through my system. "Hello?" I answered, my voice hoarse from disuse. "Mr. Forrester?" Dr. Chen's voice was tight with barely contained frustration. "I'm calling to update you on Sarah's condition." I held my breath, hoping against hope for good news. "I'm sorry, but there's been no change," she continued. "We've tried every treatment we can think of, consulted with specialists across the country, but—" She trailed off, the unspoken words hanging heavily between us. "But what?" I prompted, dreading the answer. Dr. Chen sighed. "But we're no closer to understanding what's causing this, let alone how to treat it. The CDC is baffled. They've never seen anything like this before." I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. "What about the other patients, Tom, and the others?" "All the same," she replied. "Stable, but unresponsive. Mr. Forrester, I have to ask, are you absolutely certain you can't think of anything that might have triggered this? Anything at all?" The music box sat on the mantel, its intricate carving seeming to mock me in the dim light. I opened my mouth to confess, to tell her everything, but the words stuck in my throat. Who would believe me? And what if they took the box away before I could figure out how to use it to wake everyone up? "No," I lied, hating myself for it. "Nothing I can think of." After exchanging a few more pleasantries, I hung up, the weight of my deception adding to the already crushing guilt. I turned back to my computer, determination renewed by desperation. As the first rays of dawn began to creep through the windows, my bleary eyes caught something on the screen that made my heart race. It was an obscure forum post, buried deep in the archives of a paranormal research website. Seeking information on cursed music box from New Orleans, ornate wooden design, plays haunting lullaby. Do not open if found. Contact immediately. The post was dated 3 years ago with no replies. My hands shook as I clicked on the username, hoping to find some way to contact the poster. To my dismay, the account had been inactive for years, but it was something. A lead, however tenuous. My heart raced as I uncovered a centuries-old legend of a vengeful witch and her cursed lullaby. The story spoke of a powerful voodoo priestess in 18th century New Orleans, scorned by her lover, who poured her rage and pain into a magical object, a music box that would trap the souls of those who heard its melody. "Oh, Sarah," I whispered, glancing at our wedding photo on the desk. "What have I done?" With renewed purpose, I booked a flight to New Orleans, praying the city's occult experts could offer salvation. It felt like grasping at straws, but it was the only lead I had. As I packed a small bag, my neighbor Carol knocked on the door. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her normally immaculate appearance disheveled. "Daniel," she said, her voice cracking. "Any news about Tom? The hospital won't tell me anything new." I felt a stab of guilt, knowing I was responsible for her pain. "I'm so sorry, Carol. There's been no change, but I'm not giving up. I'm going to New Orleans to consult with some specialists." Hope flickered in her eyes. "Really? Do you think they can help?" I forced a smile, trying to project a confidence I didn't feel. "I have to believe they can. I'll do whatever it takes to bring Tom and Sarah back to us." Carol surprised me with a fierce hug. "Thank you, Daniel, for not giving up. Please, if you find anything, you'll be the first to know," I promised. As I boarded the plane to New Orleans, my mind raced with possibilities. The city had a rich history of voodoo and the occult. If answers existed anywhere, surely they would be there. The flight seemed interminable, each minute stretching into an eternity as my mind conjured increasingly dire scenarios. By the time we landed, I was a bundle of nervous energy, practically sprinting through the airport to catch a taxi. "Where to, mister?" the driver asked, eyeing me curiously in the rearview mirror. "The French Quarter," I replied, remembering a name I'd come across in my research. "Do you know a place called Marie Laveau's House of Voodoo?" The driver's eyes widened slightly. "Sure do. But you might want to be careful there, mister. Some things, once you start looking into them, don't let you go so easy." His words sent a chill down my spine, but I was beyond the point of turning back. As we drove through the historic streets of New Orleans, the air thick with humidity and the scent of jasmine, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The shop, when we arrived, was exactly as I had imagined. A small, unassuming storefront with windows cluttered with mystical paraphernalia. The musty smell of incense and old books filled my nostrils as I entered, the tinkling of a small bell announcing my arrival. A young woman with dark, piercing eyes looked up from behind the counter. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice carrying a hint of a Creole accent. I approached, my heart pounding. "I hope so. I'm looking for information on a cursed music box. It's very old, probably from around here. It plays a lullaby that—" I swallowed hard. "That puts people into comas." The woman's expression shifted from polite interest to guarded concern. "I see. And why, may I ask, are you looking for such information?" I hesitated, then decided that honesty was my best bet. "Because I have the box, and I need to know how to break the curse." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Wait here," she said, disappearing into a back room. A few minutes later, she returned with an elderly woman. The newcomer's eyes, though clouded with cataracts, seemed to look right through me. "I am Mama Celeste," the old woman said, her voice strong despite her frail appearance. "Adeline tells me you have come about the widow's music box." My breath caught in my throat. "You know about it?" Mama Celeste nodded gravely. "It is an old curse, child, powerful and dangerous. Tell me, how many has it taken?" 27, I whispered, the number feeling like a physical weight on my chest. The old woman closed her eyes, muttering something under her breath that sounded like a prayer. When she opened them again, they were filled with a mixture of pity and determination. "Come," she said, gesturing for me to follow her into the back room. "We have much to discuss, and little time. The curse grows stronger with each victim." As I followed Mama Celeste into the dimly lit back room, the air heavy with the scent of herbs and candle wax, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks. Here, in this city of secrets and magic, perhaps I would finally find the answers I sought. But as I sat down across from the old woman, watching her shuffle a deck of worn tarot cards with gnarled hands, a chill ran down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that in my desperate quest to save Sarah and the others, I was about to step into a world far darker and more dangerous than I had ever imagined. "Now," Mama Celeste said, her eyes boring into mine as she laid out the first card. "Tell me everything, child, and pray that it is not too late to undo what has been done." As I began to recount my story, The tarot cards before us seemed to shimmer in the candlelight, each one a potential key to unlocking the mystery of the cursed music box. Little did I know that the path to breaking the curse would demand sacrifices I wasn't sure I was prepared to make, testing the very limits of my love and my humanity. The candles flickered ominously in Mama Celeste's back room, casting dancing shadows on the walls covered in strange symbols and faded photographs. The air was thick with the scent of incense and something else, something old and powerful that I couldn't quite place. I had just finished recounting my tale, my voice hoarse from the effort. Mama Celeste's eyes, clouded with cataracts yet unnervingly piercing, bore into mine as she laid the final tarot card on the table between us. The tower, depicted in faded colors, showed a structure being struck by lightning, figures falling from its heights. "The path ahead is treacherous, child," she said, her voice low and gravelly. "The curse you've awakened is old and hungry. It will not release its victims easily." I leaned forward, desperation clawing at my insides. "But there is a way to break it, isn't there?" "There has to be." The old woman sighed, gathering up her cards with gnarled hands. "There is always a way, but the price." She shook her head. "The price may be more than you're willing to pay." "I'll pay anything," I insisted, thinking of Sarah's still form in the hospital bed, of Tom and all the others trapped in that unnatural sleep. "Just tell me what I need to do." Mama Celeste studied me for a long moment, as if weighing my words. Finally, she nodded. "Very well. But remember, I warned you." She turned to Adeline, who had been silently observing from the corner. "Bring me the grimoire, child. The one bound in red leather." As Adeline disappeared into another room, Mama Celeste fixed me with a stern gaze. "The curse on your music box was created by a powerful voodoo priestess named Marie Laveau. Not the famous one you tourists all know about, but her grandmother, the first Marie. She was scorned by her lover, a wealthy plantation owner, and in her rage and grief, she poured all her power into creating an object that would trap souls. Adeline returned with a massive, ancient-looking book, its red leather cover cracked and faded with age. Mama Celeste opened it with reverence, her fingers tracing the yellowed pages covered in spidery handwriting and strange diagrams. "The curse feeds on life force," she continued, her eyes scanning the text. "Each soul it traps makes it stronger, harder to break. But there is a ritual that can undo it." My heart leapt. "What kind of ritual? What do I need to do?" Mama Celeste's finger stopped on a particular passage. She looked up at me, her expression grave. "It requires a sacrifice, a life freely given in exchange for those trapped." The words hit me like a physical blow. A life freely given. My life? Could I do that? Leave Sarah behind to save her? The thought made my chest ache, but wasn't that what love was supposed to be? Sacrifice? I'll do it, I stammered, my voice shaking. "If that's what it takes to save them, I'll do it." To my surprise, Mama Celeste shook her head. "It's not that simple, child. The sacrifice must be made by someone with power, someone who can channel the energies needed to break the curse. You, with all your good intentions, do not have that power." My momentary resolve crumbled, replaced by a crushing sense of helplessness. "Then what? What can I do?" The old woman closed the grimoire with a soft thud. "You need to find someone who does have that power. A practitioner of the old ways, strong enough to perform the ritual and willing to make the ultimate sacrifice." I ran a hand through my hair, frustration building. But where am I supposed to find someone like that? And who would be willing to die for strangers? Mama Celeste exchanged a look with Adeline, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, she sighed. "I know of one who might be able to help, but seeking her out, it's dangerous. She doesn't take kindly to visitors, especially those bringing trouble to her doorstep. Please," I begged, reaching across the table to grasp her wrinkled hand. "I have to try. For Sarah. For all of them. Tell me where to find her." Another long moment of silence passed before Mama Celeste nodded. "Very well. You'll find her deep in the bayou, in a place the locals call Whisper Grove. But be warned, child. Marie is not to be trifled with. She's as likely to turn you into a toad as to help you. My mind reeled. Another Marie? Could it be a descendant of the one who created the curse? Hope and fear warred within me as I absorbed this new information. How do I get there? I asked, already mentally preparing for the journey. Adeline spoke up for the first time. I can take you to the edge of the bayou, but after that, you're on your own. The way to Whisper Grove, it changes. Only those the swamp deems worthy can find it. I nodded, trying to project a confidence I didn't feel. Thank you. Both of you. I don't know how to repay you for this. Mama Celeste's expression softened slightly. Save those poor souls trapped by the curse. That will be payment enough. Her eyes hardened again. But remember my warning. The path ahead is fraught with danger, and Marie, she is not what you might expect. The next morning found me in Adeline's beat-up pickup truck, bouncing down a dirt road that seemed to be leading us straight into the heart of the Louisiana swamp. The air was thick with humidity, mosquitoes buzzing incessantly outside the open windows. "This is as far as I can take you," Adeline said as we pulled up to a rickety wooden dock. A small, flat-bottomed boat was tethered there, gently bobbing in the murky water. "The boat will take you into the bayou, but finding Whisper Grove, that's up to you and the swamp itself." I climbed out of the truck, my backpack feeling suddenly inadequate for the journey ahead. "How will I know if I've found it?" Adeline's dark eyes met mine, a hint of sympathy in their depths. "Trust me, you'll know. Just be careful what you wish for. Marie has a way of twisting things." With those ominous words ringing in my ears, I watched Adeline drive away, leaving me alone at the edge of the vast, unknowable swamp. The boat creaked as I stepped into it, the sound unnaturally loud in the eerie stillness of the bayou. As I pushed off from the dock, using the long pole Adeline had provided to navigate the shallow waters, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Eyes seemed to peer at me from the tangled roots of cypress trees, and shapes moved just beneath the water's surface, always just out of clear sight. Hours passed, or maybe it was days. Time seemed to lose all meaning in the green twilight of the swamp. I pushed on, my arms aching from the effort of poling the boat, my skin itching from countless insect bites. Just as I was beginning to think I had made a terrible mistake, that I would die out here alone and lost, I saw it. A clearing opened up ahead, a small island rising from the murky waters. Ancient trees formed a natural archway, their branches intertwining to create a tunnel of greenery. And there, at the end of the tunnel, stood a ramshackle cabin, its weathered boards seeming to shift and move in the dappled sunlight. Whisper Grove. I had found it. My heart pounding, I guided the boat to the edge of the island and stepped out onto solid ground. The earth seemed to pulse beneath my feet, a living thing welcoming me, or perhaps warning me away. As I approached the cabin, the door swung open of its own accord. A woman's voice, low and melodious, drifted out to me. "Well, well," it said, amusement and something darker coloring the words. "What have we here? A lost soul seeking answers? Or perhaps a sacrifice?" I swallowed hard, squaring my shoulders as I prepared to meet the mysterious Marie. Desperation led me to the door of Marie, a voodoo priestess whose eyes held secrets darker than night. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever price I had to pay, I knew there was no turning back now. Sarah's life, and the lives of all the others trapped by the curse, depended on what happened next. Taking a deep breath, I stepped over the threshold and into Marie's domain, ready to face whatever trials awaited me in my quest to break the curse of the music box. The musty air of Marie's cabin enveloped me as I stepped inside, my eyes struggling to adjust to the dim interior. Shelves lined the walls, crammed with jars of unidentifiable substances, dried herbs, and what looked disturbingly like animal bones. In the center of the room stood a large wooden table, its surface covered in intricate carvings that seemed to writhe and move in the flickering candlelight. And there, behind the table, stood Marie herself. She was not what I had expected. Instead of the ancient crone I had imagined, I found myself face to face with a woman who appeared to be in her early 40s, her dark skin smooth and unblemished, her eyes sharp and knowing. Her hair was a mass of intricate braids adorned with beads and feathers, and she wore a dress of deep crimson that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. "So," she said, her voice rich and melodious, "you're the fool who awakened the widow's music box." It wasn't a question. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to turn and run. "Yes," I managed to croak out. I need your help." Marie's laugh was like the tinkling of bells, beautiful yet somehow menacing. "Of course you do. They always do, when they've meddled with forces beyond their understanding." She gestured to a chair across from her. "Sit. Tell me your tale of woe." As I sank into the chair, which creaked ominously under my weight, I found the whole story spilling out of me in a rush. I told her about finding the music box, about Sarah falling into her unnatural sleep, about the curse spreading through our town. Marie listened in silence, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she leaned back, studying me with those piercing eyes. "And what precisely do you expect me to do about it?" "Mama Celeste said you might be able to break the curse," I said, hope and desperation warring in my voice. "She said it would require a sacrifice, but—" Marie cut me off with a sharp gesture. "Celeste should know better than to send unprepared fools to my door," she snapped. Then, more softly, "But she's not wrong. Breaking the curse is possible, but the cost—" She trailed off, her eyes growing distant. "I'll pay any price," I insisted. "Just tell me what I need to do." Marie's gaze snapped back to me, suddenly intense. "Would you? Would you really pay any price, Daniel Forrester?" The use of my name, which I hadn't given her, sent a chill down my spine. But I nodded firmly. "For Sarah, for all of them. Yes. Anything." A slow smile spread across Marie's face, not reaching her eyes. "We shall see." She stood abruptly. "Come. There's something you need to see." She led me to a back room of the cabin, where a large, ornate mirror hung on the wall. Its surface was cloudy, swirling with mist that seemed to move of its own accord. "Look," Marie commanded, waving her hand in front of the mirror. The mist cleared, revealing a scene that made my heart clench. It was Sarah's hospital room. Doctors and nurses swarmed around her bed, their movements frantic. "What's happening?" I gasped, pressing closer to the mirror. Marie's voice was grim. "The curse is progressing. Your wife's life force is fading." I watched in horror as a doctor pressed paddles to Sarah's chest, her body arching off the bed as electricity coursed through her. The steady beep of her heart monitor had given way to a single, unbroken tone. "No," I whispered, my hand reaching out to touch the mirror's surface. "Sarah, please." After what felt like an eternity, the frantic activity in the room slowed. The doctor stepped back, shaking his head. I could see his lips moving. "Time of death." "No," I shouted, whirling to face Marie. "You have to do something. Please." Marie's expression was impassive. "I've done nothing but show you the truth, Daniel. This is what awaits all the victims of the music box's curse, unless—" "Unless what?" I demanded, grabbing her arms in desperation. "Tell me." She didn't flinch at my touch, her eyes boring into mine. "Unless you're willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. A life freely given, remember? But not just any life. The curse demands a soul of power, one capable of channeling the energies needed to break it." My mind raced, trying to process what she was saying. "But I don't have that kind of power. How can I—" "You can't," Marie said simply. "But I can." The implication of her words hit me like a physical blow. You'd sacrifice yourself?" Marie's laugh was bitter. "Don't be foolish. I have no intention of dying for your mistake." She turned back to the mirror, waving her hand again. The scene shifted, showing the hospital at large. Beds lined the corridors, each one occupied by a victim of the curse. Doctors moved between them, their faces drawn with exhaustion and defeat. "The curse is spreading faster than ever," Marie explained. "Soon, it will reach beyond your little town, consuming more and more souls. It must be stopped." I returned home to find the hospital in chaos, with more victims falling into comas each day. The scene from Marie's mirror had become a grim reality. Beds crammed every available space, the air filled with the steady beep of heart monitors and the quiet sobs of family members. Dr. Chen intercepted me as I entered, her face haggard with exhaustion. "Mr. Forrester, where have you been? We've been trying to reach you." I was seeking help," I stammered, the weight of my failure crushing me. "What's the situation?" Dr. Chen's eyes were haunted as she led me through the crowded corridors. "It's bad. We've had to convert the entire East Wing into a makeshift ward. The CDC is baffled, and we're running out of resources. If this keeps spreading—" She didn't need to finish the thought. I could see the fear in every face I passed, hear it in the whispered conversations. This was no longer just about Sarah or our small town. The curse was threatening to become a global catastrophe. As we reached Sarah's room, Dr. Chen placed a hand on my arm. "Mr. Forrester, Daniel, I have to ask again. Are you absolutely certain there's nothing you can tell us about how this started? Anything at all?" The accusing glares of my neighbors weighed heavily as whispers of my involvement spread. I could feel the suspicion in Dr. Chen's gaze, in the sidelong looks from nurses and orderlies. They knew somehow that I was connected to this nightmare. Guilt clawed at my insides as I shook my head. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I wish I knew." Dr. Chen's shoulders slumped in defeat. "We're doing everything we can, but—" She trailed off, her professional demeanor cracking to reveal the fear beneath. I nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "Thank you. Can I sit with Sarah for a while?" She gestured for me to enter the room, and I sank into the chair beside Sarah's bed. I watched helplessly as Sarah's vital signs weakened, knowing time was running out. The steady beep of the heart monitor seemed to mock me, each tone a reminder of my failure. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," I whispered, taking her limp hand in mine. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I thought I could fix it." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Some fix, huh?" I don't know how long I sat there, lost in my guilt and grief. The room grew darker as night fell, the hospital quieting around me. As I stood to leave, my hand brushed against my pocket, feeling the hard outline of the music box within. In a moment of despair, I considered destroying the box, fearing it might be the only way to end the curse. I pulled it out, studying its intricate carvings in the dim light. It seemed impossible that something so beautiful could cause so much pain. My fingers traced the edge of the lid, and for a moment I was tempted to open it, to let the cursed lullaby claim me too. At least then I'd be with Sarah in whatever dark dream world the victims were trapped in. But no, I couldn't give up, not when there was still a chance, however slim, of breaking the curse. I tucked the box away, my resolve strengthening. I would find a way, no matter the cost. As I turned to leave, a glint of metal caught my eye. There, half hidden beneath Sarah's pillow, was a small key. My breath caught in my throat as I realized what it must be. The key to the music box's hidden compartment. With trembling hands, I retrieved the key and inserted it into the tiny keyhole I had noticed on the box's underside. It turned with a soft click, and a small drawer slid open. Inside lay a faded photograph and a cryptic note. The photograph showed a young woman, her features hauntingly similar to Marie's, standing next to a man in 19th century clothing. On the back, in faded ink, was written, "Marie and Henri, 1853. The note, written in the same spidery hand, read, "The price of love is eternal vigilance. The price of betrayal is eternal sleep." A glimmer of hope arose as I discovered this hidden compartment in the box, containing the faded photograph and cryptic note. It wasn't much, but it was a lead. A connection between the curse's origin and the Marie I had met in the bayou. As I left the hospital, the weight of the music box heavy in my pocket and the newfound clues clutched in my hand, I knew that my journey was far from over. The curse was spreading faster than ever, and time was running out. But now, armed with this new information, I had a direction. I would return to Marie, confront her with what I had found, and this time, I wouldn't leave without answers or a solution. The lives of Sarah, Tom, and countless others hung in the balance. Whatever price needed to be paid, whatever sacrifice required, I would face it. Because the alternative, a world consumed by the widow's eternal sleep, was unthinkable. The swamp seemed darker, more foreboding as I made my way back to Marie's cabin. The air was thick with humidity and the calls of unseen creatures, each sound making me jump. The photograph and note burned in my pocket, alongside the cursed music box. As I approached Whisper Grove, the trees seemed to part before me, their branches creaking ominously. Marie stood on the porch of her cabin, as if she had been expecting me. "Back so soon, Daniel?" she called, her voice carrying easily across the water. "I thought you might need more motivation." I gritted my teeth, guiding the boat to the shore with more force than necessary. "You knew," I accused as I stepped onto land. "You knew about the hidden compartment, about the photograph." Marie's smile was enigmatic. "I know many things. The question is, what do you know?" I pulled out the photograph and note, holding them up. "I know that you're connected to this curse somehow. That woman in the photo, she looks just like you. Your ancestor?" "Clever boy," Marie murmured, her eyes glinting. "Come inside. It seems we have much to discuss." The interior of the cabin felt different this time, more charged, as if the very air was alive with potential. Marie gestured for me to sit at the large wooden table, its surface now clear of the clutter that had been there before. "You want answers?" she said. Not a question. "But are you prepared for what they might mean?" I leaned forward, my patience wearing thin. "People are dying, Marie. Sarah is dying. I don't have time for games." Marie's expression softened slightly. "No, I suppose you don't." She reached out, taking the photograph from me. Her fingers traced the image of the woman, her doppelganger, with something like tenderness. "This was the first Marie," she explained. "My great-great-grandmother. She was a powerful voodoo priestess, respected and feared throughout New Orleans, and she fell in love with a man who could never truly be hers. Henri, I guessed, remembering the name from the back of the photograph. Marie nodded. A wealthy plantation owner, already married. He promised to leave his wife, to build a life with Marie. She believed him. Fool that she was." Her voice turned bitter. "When she discovered she was with child, his child, she went to him, expecting joy. Instead, he cast her aside, denying everything. I felt a pang of sympathy despite myself. So she created the curse out of revenge? Out of pain, Marie corrected. Out of a broken heart that could not bear to see others happy while she suffered. She poured all her power, all her grief and rage, into that music box. A lullaby to sing the world to sleep, so that no one else could ever hurt her again." The weight of generations of pain and magic settled over the room. I swallowed hard, trying to process what I was hearing. But why is it active now? Why didn't it affect people before? Marie's laugh was hollow. Oh, but it did. Over the years there were incidents. People who came into possession of the box, only to lose everything. But never on this scale. The curse has been growing stronger, feeding on each soul it traps. And now... She trailed off, her eyes distant. Now it's out of control, I finished for her. But there has to be a way to stop it. You said before that it would require a sacrifice. Marie's gaze snapped back to me, suddenly intense. Yes, a life freely given, by someone with the power to channel the energies needed to break the curse. But it's not that simple, Daniel. The curse has grown too strong, A single sacrifice may not be enough anymore. My heart sank. Then what? What can we do? Marie stood abruptly, moving to a cabinet in the corner of the room. She returned with a small vial filled with a swirling opalescent liquid. There is one possibility, she said slowly, but it's dangerous, possibly fatal. I'll do it, I said immediately. Whatever it is, if there's a chance to save Sarah and the others, I'll do it. Marie's smile was sad. Your devotion is admirable, but this isn't something you can do alone. She held up the vial. This potion will allow your consciousness to enter the dream world where the victims are trapped. If you can find them, wake them from within, it might weaken the curse enough for me to break it from this side. I reached for the vial, but Marie held it back. Listen to me, Daniel. This is not a physical journey. The dangers in that world are to your mind, your very soul. If you become trapped there, or if your body dies while you're under, there's no coming back. The gravity of what she was proposing settled over me. It was a desperate plan, with no guarantee of success. But as I thought of Sarah lying motionless in that hospital bed, of all the other victims and their grieving families, I knew I had no choice. I understand, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. What do I need to do? Marie nodded, seemingly satisfied with my resolve. She began gathering items from around the room, candles, herbs, a piece of chalk. As she worked, she explained, I'll perform a ritual to guide you into the dream world. Once there, you must find Sarah and the others. Convince them that they're trapped in a dream, that they need to wake up. The more souls you can free, the weaker the curse will become. And what will you be doing? I asked, watching as she drew intricate symbols on the floor around a small palette. I'll be maintaining the connection between your body and your consciousness, she replied, and preparing the ritual to break the curse once you've weakened it sufficiently. But Daniel, she paused, fixing me with a serious look, you must hurry. The longer you're in that world, the greater the risk of becoming lost yourself. As Marie made the final preparations, a thought occurred to me. Wait, I said. How will I find Sarah and the others in there? It could be an entire world. Marie considered for a moment, then reached for the music box I had placed on the table. Take this with you, she said. In the dream world, it should act as a beacon, drawing the trapped souls to it. But be careful. It may attract other things as well. With everything in place, Marie gestured for me to lie down on the pallet. She handed me the vial of shimmering liquid. Drink this, then close your eyes and focus on Sarah. The ritual will do the rest. I took a deep breath, looking at the vial in my hand. This was it. My last desperate chance to save the woman I loved and all the others affected by this curse. With a silent prayer, I drank the potion in one swift gulp. The effect was almost immediate. The room began to spin, Marie's chanting fading into a distant hum. I closed my eyes, concentrating on Sarah's face, the sound of her laugh, the feel of her hand in mine. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself in a world of mist and shadows. Ghostly shapes moved at the edge of my vision, always just out of reach. The music box felt heavy in my hand, its surface seeming to pulse with an inner light. I wandered through misty landscapes, calling out for Sarah and the others, my voice echoing in the void. Sarah, can you hear me? Tom, anyone? As I pushed deeper into this strange dreamscape, the mist began to coalesce into more solid forms. I found myself walking down a street that looked like our hometown, but wrong. The colors were too vivid, the proportions slightly off. And everywhere I looked, people moved as if in a daze, their eyes unfocused. Shadowy figures danced at the edge of my vision, always staying just out of reach. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, hunted even. The music box grew warmer in my hand, its glow intensifying. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the dreamlike haze. Daniel, is that really you? I spun around to see Tom, my neighbor, standing there looking confused and slightly translucent. "Tom," I exclaimed, relief flooding through me. "Thank God. Listen, we don't have much time. This isn't real, Tom. You're trapped in a dream and I need you to wake up." Tom's brow furrowed. "A dream? But it feels so real. I've been here for I don't know how long." "I know it feels real," I said urgently. "But trust me. Think about Carol, about your life. You need to fight this and wake up." As I spoke, Tom's form seemed to flicker, becoming more solid. "Carol," he murmured. "Yes, I remember. But how do I wake up?" Before I could answer, a bone-chilling howl echoed through the dreamscape. The shadows at the edges of my vision coalesced into monstrous forms, teeth and claws gleaming. "We need to move," I said, grabbing Tom's arm. "Focus on waking up, on returning to your body. I'll try to hold them off." As Tom closed his eyes in concentration, I turned to face the nightmarish creatures born from the darkest corners of the collective unconscious. They advanced slowly, their forms shifting and changing with each step. I held up the music box, its light pulsing brighter. The creatures hesitated, seemingly repelled by its glow, but I knew it wouldn't hold them for long. "Come on, Tom," I muttered. "Wake up! Wake up!" With a gasp, Tom's form shimmered and vanished. One down, but how many more to go? And where was Sarah? And, as if in answer to my thoughts, I heard a faint melody drifting through the air. The lullaby from the music box. It seemed to be coming from a decrepit mansion that had appeared at the end of the street. My heart racing, I started towards the mansion, the nightmarish creatures howling behind me. I knew somehow that Sarah was in there. But what other dangers awaited me within the heart of this cursed dream? With a deep breath, I clutched the music box tightly and stepped through the mansion's doors, praying I wasn't too late to save the woman I loved and break this terrible curse once and for all. The interior of the mansion was a twisted reflection of reality, its grand foyer stretching impossibly far, staircases spiraling up into darkness. The lullaby echoed through the halls, growing louder with each step I took. The music box in my hand pulsed in time with the melody, guiding me deeper into the heart of this nightmare. As I ascended a staircase that seemed to shift beneath my feet, portraits on the walls came to life, their eyes following my progress. I recognized some of the faces, victims of the curse, their expressions frozen in a mix of fear and longing. "Sarah," I called out, my voice echoing strangely in the warped space. "Sarah, where are you?" A child's laughter answered me, high and eerie. I spun around to see a little girl in an old-fashioned dress standing at the end of the hallway. She smiled, revealing teeth that were just a bit too sharp. "Are you looking for the pretty lady?" she asked, her voice sing-song and unsettling. "She's with the others in the ballroom, but you'd better hurry. The dance is about to begin." Before I could question her further, she vanished in a puff of smoke. The lullaby grew louder, more insistent, pulling me towards a set of ornate double doors at the end of the hall. I pushed them open to reveal a vast ballroom, filled with swirling mist and shadowy figures dancing to the haunting melody. And there, in the center of it all, was Sarah. Her eyes were closed, her movements mechanical as she danced with a partner whose features kept shifting, never quite resolving into a recognizable face. "Sarah!" I shouted, pushing my way through the crowd of dancers. They turned to look at me with blank, unseeing eyes, their forms flickering between human and something other. As I reached Sarah, I grabbed her arm, pulling her away from her nebulous partner. "Sarah, wake up, this isn't real." Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and dreamy. "Daniel, is that you? What are you doing here? The dance isn't over yet." "There is no dance, Sarah," I said urgently, shaking her gently. "This is all a dream, a trap. You need to wake up." A low, menacing chuckle filled the room. The dancers faded away like smoke, leaving Sarah and me alone in the vast space. Well, not quite alone. The witch appeared before me, her ageless face twisted with centuries of bitterness and pain. She looked just like the woman in the photograph, yet somehow older, more primal. Power radiated from her in palpable waves. Well, well, she purred, her voice like honey laced with poison. What have we here? A would-be hero, come to save his true love. Her laugh was cold and mocking. How quaint. I pushed Sarah behind me, facing the witch. Let her go, I demanded, trying to keep the fear from my voice. Let all of them go. This curse has gone on long enough. The witch's eyes flashed with anger. Gone on long enough? What do you know of time, mortal? What do you know of suffering? She gestured around the empty ballroom. This is my kingdom, built on the pain of betrayal. Why should I give it up? Because it's wrong, I said, my voice stronger now. Because the people you've trapped here have done nothing to you. Your pain doesn't justify causing pain to others. For a moment, something like doubt flickered across the witch's face. Then her expression hardened. Pretty words, she sneered. But words alone won't break my curse. Are you willing to pay the price, I wonder? She raised her hand, and suddenly Sarah gasped, clutching her chest. Daniel, she whispered, her voice weak. I can't breathe. Panic surged through me. Stop it, I shouted at the witch. What do you want? I'll do anything. The witch's smile was cruel. Anything? Oh, my dear boy, be careful what you offer. She waved her hand again, and Sarah's breathing eased. I'll make you a deal, a life for a life. Your soul in exchange for hers and all the others trapped here. The weight of her words hit me like a physical blow. My life for Sarah's, for all of them. Wasn't that what I had come here prepared to do? Daniel, no, Sarah said, her voice stronger now. She gripped my arm tightly. You can't. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me. I turned to her, drinking in the sight of her face, memorizing every detail. I have to, Sarah. I can't let you die. I can't let any of them die because of my mistake. Tears streamed down my face as I thought of Sarah living on without me, but I knew what I had to do. I faced the witch again, my resolve firm. I accept. My life for theirs. The witch's eyes gleamed with triumph. Excellent. A noble sacrifice indeed. She extended her hand, dark energy crackling around her fingers. Come then. Seal our bargain with a touch, and I'll release them all. Just as I was about to reach out to seal my fate, Sarah's spirit broke through her dreamlike state. She pushed past me, placing herself between the witch and me. No, she cried. I won't let you do this, Daniel. There has to be another way. The witch's laugh chilled me to the bone as she revealed the true price. Oh, but there is another way, my dears. You see, Daniel, I'm feeling generous. I'll give you a choice. Her eyes glittered with malice. You can sacrifice yourself to save everyone. Or you can choose to save only your precious Sarah, leaving the others to their fate. The impossible weight of the decision crashed down on me. Save everyone at the cost of my own life? Or save Sarah and live with the guilt of condemning others? How could anyone make such a choice? You can't ask this of him, Sarah shouted, her face flushed with anger. It's inhuman. The witch's smile was cold. I'm not human, dear. I'm something far older, far more powerful, and I've waited centuries for this moment. She turned her gaze back to me. Choose, Daniel. Your life for all, or your love for one. The clock is ticking. I stood there, frozen, my mind racing. The faces of all the victims flashed before my eyes. Tom, Dr. Chen, countless others I'd never even met. Then Sarah, my Sarah, the love of my life. How could I choose? Daniel, Sarah said softly, taking my hand. Listen to me. You can't sacrifice yourself. Think of all the good you can do in the world, all the people you might help in the future. One life isn't worth more than all of those. I stared at her, aghast. Sarah, no, I can't. I can't let you die, I won't. She smiled, tears in her eyes. It's not your choice to make, it's mine, and I choose to save them. She turned to the witch. "Take me instead. Let Daniel and the others go." "No," I shouted, grabbing Sarah's arm. "I won't let you do this." The witch watched our exchange with cruel amusement. How touching. Love's true sacrifice. "But are you sure that's your final decision?" Her gaze bore into me. "Think carefully, Daniel. Can you live with yourself, knowing you let her die to save strangers?" I was torn between my love for Sarah and the weight of all the other lives hanging in the balance. Agonizing memories of our life together flashed before my eyes, making the choice even harder. Our first date, our wedding day, quiet mornings and laughter-filled evenings. A future we might never have. The witch's patience wore thin and the dreamscape began to crumble around us. "Choose now," she hissed, "or I'll take you all." Sarah's love shone in her eyes as she urged me to save the others, willing to sacrifice herself. In that moment I saw the strength of her character, the depth of her compassion, and I knew what I had to do. With a heavy heart, I made my choice, praying I could live with the consequences. "I choose," I began, my voice breaking, but before I could finish, a blinding light filled the ballroom. The witch screamed, a sound of pure rage and pain, and through the light, I heard a familiar voice, Marie's voice, chanting words of power. "Now, Daniel," she called, "the curse is weakening. Wake them all. Wake them now." Understanding flooded through me. This had been Marie's plan all along, to weaken the curse from the inside while she worked to break it from the outside. The impossible choice had been a final test, a distraction to keep the witch occupied. I grabbed Sarah's hand, focusing all my will, all my love, into one desperate command. "Wake up!" I shouted, my voice echoing with power I didn't know I possessed. "All of you, wake up!" The ballroom shattered like glass, the witch's scream fading into nothingness. I felt myself falling, Sarah's hand slipping from mine as consciousness rushed back. I gasped awake on Marie's floor, the weight of my decision crushing my chest. The cabin was in disarray, candles overturned, the air thick with the scent of burned herbs and ozone. Marie stood over me, her face drawn with exhaustion but her eyes bright with triumph. "You did it," she said, helping me to my feet. "The curse is broken." "Sarah," I croaked, my throat dry. "The others, did they?" Marie nodded, a rare smile crossing her face. "See for yourself." She gestured to her mirror, which now showed scenes from the hospital. Patients were stirring, eyes fluttering open as relieved family members cried tears of joy. "We need to go," I said, already moving towards the door. "I need to see her." As we rushed out of the cabin, heading back towards civilization and the hospital where Sarah waited, I couldn't shake the feeling that our ordeal wasn't entirely over. The curse was broken, yes, but its effects, and the choices we'd made, would linger. But for now, all that mattered was getting back to Sarah, holding her in my arms and knowing that we had faced the impossible together. And won. The journey back to the hospital was a blur of anxious anticipation. Marie drove, her ancient pickup truck rattling ominously as we sped down the highway. I sat in the passenger seat, my hands clenched into fists, willing the miles to disappear faster. What if it didn't work? I muttered, more to myself than to Marie. What if she still... Marie's hand on my arm startled me. "Have faith, Daniel," she said, her eyes never leaving the road. "The curse is broken." I felt it shatter. I nodded, trying to draw comfort from her words, but doubt gnawed at me, memories of the witch's cruel smile and impossible ultimatum haunting my thoughts. As we pulled into the hospital parking lot, I was out of the truck before it had fully stopped, racing towards the entrance. The scene inside was one of controlled chaos, doctors and nurses rushing from room to room, excited voices echoing down the corridors. Dr. Chen intercepted me as I ran towards Sarah's room. Her face was flushed with excitement and confusion. "Mr. Forrester, it's incredible. They're all waking up. We don't understand how, but..." I cut her off, my voice urgent. "Sarah, is she..." Dr. Chen's smile was answer enough, but her words sent a wave of relief crashing over me. She's awake, Daniel. Confused and a bit disoriented, but awake. She's asking for you. I sagged against the wall, tears of joy and relief streaming down my face. Thank God, I whispered. Thank God. Dr. Chen's expression turned serious. Daniel, what happened? How is this possible? I shook my head, not ready to explain, not sure if I could ever explain. Later, I promise, I need to see her. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Of course, go. I practically ran to Sarah's room, my heart pounding, and there she was, sitting up in bed, her eyes clear and alert. When she saw me, her face lit up with a smile that made my knees weak. Daniel, she breathed, as I rushed to her side, gathering her in my arms. Sarah, I choked out, holding her tightly, afraid to let go. You're okay. You're really okay. She pulled back slightly, her hands cupping my face. Thanks to you, she said softly. I remember pieces. You were there, in the dream. You saved us. I shook my head, overwhelmed by emotion. I almost lost you. The words stuck in my throat as I remembered the witch's ultimatum, the impossible choice I'd nearly been forced to make. Sarah's brow furrowed. Daniel, what is it? What's wrong? I took a deep breath, knowing I had to tell her the truth. We'd been through too much for secrets now. Sarah, in the dream world, the witch, she gave me a choice. Sarah's eyes widened as I recounted the nightmare scenario. My life for everyone, or saving only her at the cost of all the others. Her hand tightened on mine as I spoke, her face a mix of horror and understanding. Oh, Daniel, she whispered when I finished. What an awful choice. But you didn't have to make it, right? We're all here, we're all okay. I nodded, but the weight of what might have been pressed down on me. But what if I had? Sarah, I was torn. I wanted to save you more than anything, but the thought of all those other lives. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. Listen to me, Daniel. The fact that you struggled with that decision, that you were willing to consider sacrificing yourself to save everyone, that shows who you really are. A good man. The man I fell in love with. Her words were a balm to my troubled soul, but they couldn't entirely erase the guilt and fear. But what if it happens again? I asked, voicing the fear that had been growing since we left Marie's cabin. What if the curse isn't really gone, or something else comes after us? Sarah sat up straighter, a determined look in her eyes. Then we'll face it together. Whatever comes, we're stronger together than apart. You taught me that. I managed a small smile, drawing strength from her resolve. Together, I agreed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. A soft knock at the door interrupted our moment. Marie stood there, her usual enigmatic expression tinged with what might have been respect. I hate to intrude, she said, but we need to talk. All of us. Sarah looked at her curiously. Who are you? This is Marie, I explained. She's the one who helped me break the curse. Marie, this is Sarah. Marie nodded in acknowledgement. A pleasure to meet you properly, Sarah. I'm glad to see you well. Sarah's eyes widened in recognition. You were there too, weren't you? In the dream? I remember your voice. Indeed, Marie replied. But as I said, we have much to discuss. The curse may be broken, but its effects linger. And there are complications. My heart sank at her words. What kind of complications? Marie glanced around the busy hospital corridor. Not here. We need privacy for this conversation. Can you travel? Sarah nodded, already moving to get out of bed. I feel fine. Tired, but fine. Within an hour, after a brief examination by Dr. Chen and a promise to return for a full checkup, we were in Marie's truck, heading back to her cabin in the bayou. The silence in the vehicle was heavy with unasked questions and unspoken fears. As we entered the dimly lit cabin, Marie gestured for us to sit at the large wooden table. She busied herself preparing a tea that filled the air with a spicy, calming aroma. "First," she said, as she set steaming cups before us, "you should know that you did well, Daniel. Breaking a curse of that magnitude, it's no small feat." I shook my head. "I didn't do it alone. You were the one who—" Marie cut me off with a wave of her hand. "I provided the means, but the strength came from you. Both of you," she added, nodding to Sarah. "Your love, your willingness to sacrifice for each other and for others, that was the key." Sarah leaned forward, her face serious. "But it's not over, is it? You said there were complications." Marie sighed, suddenly looking every bit her considerable age. "The curse is broken, yes. But curses that powerful, they leave scars. On the world, on the people they touched, and on those who broke them." A chill ran down my spine at her words. "What do you mean, scars? Are we in danger?" "Not exactly," Marie hedged. "But you've been touched by powerful magic. It's changed you, in ways we may not fully understand yet." Sarah gripped my hand tightly. "Changed how?" Marie's gaze was intense as she looked at each of us in turn. "You may find yourselves more sensitive to the supernatural, more aware of the hidden currents of the world, and there's a chance that others, beings from the other side, may be drawn to you." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Are you saying we're going to be haunted? Hunted?" "Not necessarily," Marie replied. "But you need to be prepared. Knowledge is power, especially in dealing with the unseen world." Sarah's voice was steady as she asked, "So what do we do? How do we protect ourselves?" A small smile touched Marie's lips. "That, my dears, is where your education begins. If you're willing to learn, I can teach you to navigate this new reality you found yourselves in." I exchanged a look with Sarah, seeing my own mix of fear and determination reflected in her eyes. We'd been through hell together, faced an impossible choice, and come out the other side. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them side by side. "We're willing," I said, speaking for both of us. "Teach us." Marie nodded, satisfaction evident in her expression. "Good. We'll begin with protection spells, then move on to—" A sudden gust of wind extinguished the candles in the cabin, plunging us into darkness. A cold laugh echoed through the room, a laugh I recognized with a jolt of terror. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" The witch's voice hissed from the shadows. "Oh, my dears, we're just getting started." As Marie frantically relit the candles and began chanting in a language I didn't understand, I pulled Sarah close, my mind racing. We had broken the curse, saved the victims, but at what cost? What forces had we unleashed, and were we truly prepared to face them? The witch's laughter faded, but her presence lingered, a promise of challenges to come. As I looked at Sarah's determined face and felt the reassuring strength of Marie beside us, I knew that whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. The impossible choice had been averted once, but I had a feeling we weren't done making difficult decisions. Our journey, it seemed, was far from over, but with love, knowledge, and a touch of magic on our side, perhaps we stood a chance against the darkness that threatened to engulf us. The witch's laughter faded, leaving behind a chilling silence in Marie's cabin. Sarah's hand gripped mine tightly as Marie finished her chant, the last syllables hanging in the air like smoke. "What was that?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I thought the curse was broken." Marie's face was grim as she lit more candles, dispelling the last of the shadows. "The curse is broken, yes, but its creator, she's not so easily defeated." I ran a hand through my hair, frustration and fear warring within me. "So what do we do now? How do we fight something we can't even see?" Marie's eyes met mine, her gaze intense. "We prepare, we learn, and we stay vigilant." She moved to a large bookcase, pulling out several ancient-looking tomes. "Your education begins now. We don't have the luxury of time." For the next several hours, Marie drilled us on protection spells, magical theory, and the basics of energy manipulation. My head spun with information, but I forced myself to focus. Our lives might depend on this knowledge. As dawn broke, casting long shadows through the cabin windows, Marie finally called a halt. "Enough for now," she said, her voice hoarse from hours of instruction. "You need rest, both of you, and—" She hesitated, glancing at the clock. "And you should return to the hospital. They'll be looking for you, and there are others who need to know what's happened." The drive back to town was silent, each of us lost in our own thoughts. As we approached the hospital, I could see a crowd gathered outside, families reunited, patients blinking in the morning sunlight as if seeing the world anew. Dr. Chen spotted us as we pulled up, rushing over with a mix of relief and confusion on her face. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "We've been trying to reach you for hours." I exchanged a glance with Sarah, unsure how to explain. How could we possibly make anyone understand what we'd been through, what we'd learned? Sarah stepped in, her voice calm and reassuring. "We're sorry, Dr. Chen. We needed some time to process everything. It's been a lot to take in." Dr. Chen's expression softened slightly. "I can imagine. But we need to run some tests, make sure everything's okay, and—" She hesitated, lowering her voice. "The CDC is here. They want to talk to everyone who was affected, try to understand what happened." My heart raced at the thought of government agents poking around, asking questions we couldn't possibly answer truthfully. "We'll cooperate as much as we can," I said carefully. "But right now we'd like to see our friends and family, make sure everyone's okay." Dr. Chen nodded, leading us into the hospital. The atmosphere inside was a strange mix of joy and confusion. Patients who had been comatose for weeks were now awake and alert, reuniting with tearful loved ones. But underneath the celebration, I could sense an undercurrent of fear and uncertainty. No one understood what had happened, and that lack of understanding bred anxiety. As we walked down the corridor, a familiar voice called out, "Daniel! Sarah!" We turned to see Tom jogging towards us, his face split in a wide grin. He enveloped us both in a bear hug. "Thank God you're okay," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was so worried when I woke up and you weren't here, Sarah." Sarah returned the hug, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'm okay, Tom. We're all okay." Tom pulled back, his expression turning serious. "But what happened? I remember dreams, nightmares, and you were there, Daniel. You saved us somehow, didn't you?" I swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. How much should we reveal? How much would anyone believe? Before I could formulate an answer, a stern voice cut through the corridor. "Mr. and Mrs. Forrester?" We turned to see a man in a crisp suit, flanked by two others in similar attire. He held up a badge. "Agent Simmons, CDC, we need to ask you some questions about the incident." I felt Sarah tense beside me. "Of course," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But as we told Dr. Chen, we'd like some time with our friends and family first. It's been a long night." Agent Simmons' eyes narrowed slightly. "I understand, but this is a matter of national security. We need to understand what happened here, prevent it from happening again. If you could just come with us." "I think," Marie's voice rang out, causing us all to jump, "that Mr. and Mrs. Forrester have been through quite enough for now. They'll speak with you when they're ready, and not a moment before." I turned to see Marie striding down the corridor, her presence commanding respect despite her small stature. Agent Simmons opened his mouth to protest, but something in Marie's gaze made him think better of it. "Very well," he said stiffly. "But we'll need to speak with you soon. All of you," he added, glancing at Tom. As the agents retreated, Tom looked at us in confusion. "Who's this? And what's really going on here?" I sighed, feeling the weight of everything we'd been through, everything we still faced. "It's a long story, Tom, and honestly, I'm not sure you'd believe it if we told you." Sarah squeezed my hand, then turned to Tom with a gentle smile. "Why don't you gather everyone? You, Carol, our families. We'll explain as best we can, but..." It might be easier if we only have to do it once. Tom nodded slowly, still looking bewildered. Okay, yeah, I can do that. But Daniel, Sarah, you're okay, right? Really okay? I managed a small smile. We're okay, Tom. Different, maybe, but okay. As Tom went to gather the others, Marie pulled us aside. Remember what I taught you, she said in a low voice. Protection spells, energy shielding, use them. The veil between worlds is thin right now, and there may be entities looking to take advantage of the situation. I nodded, feeling the weight of our new reality settling on my shoulders. What about the CDC, the authorities? What do we tell them? Marie's smile was enigmatic. As little as possible. Some truths are too dangerous for those unprepared to hear them. Stick to the facts they can understand. You fell ill. You had strange dreams. You woke up. The rest... She trailed off, her eyes distant. The rest is between us and the shadows. As our friends and family began to gather in a private waiting room, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. How could we possibly explain what had happened without sounding insane? How much should we reveal, and how much should we keep hidden to protect those we loved? Sarah's hand found mine, her touch grounding me. Together, she whispered, echoing our earlier promise. I nodded, drawing strength from her presence. Together, I agreed. We entered the room, faces both familiar and dear turning to us with expressions ranging from joy to confusion to concern. As I looked at each of them, Tom and Carol, our parents, siblings, close friends, I realized that our awakening wasn't just physical. We had awakened to a world far vaster and more mysterious than we had ever imagined. The witch's words echoed in my mind. We're just getting started. But as I squeezed Sarah's hand and began to speak, I felt a surge of determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dark forces might threaten us, we would face them. We had survived the impossible, broken a centuries-old curse. We had chosen love and sacrifice over fear and selfishness. And in that choice, in that awakening, we had found a strength we never knew we possessed, a strength we would need for the battles to come. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice steady despite the tumult of emotions within. What we're about to tell you might be hard to believe, but I promise you, it's the truth. It all started with an antique music box. As I spoke, I could see the disbelief, the shock, the fear play across their faces. But underneath it all, I saw something else. Trust. These people knew us, loved us, and even if they couldn't fully understand what we'd been through, they believed in us. That belief, that love, would be our shield against the darkness. Our awakening had brought knowledge, power, and danger, but it had also shown us the true strength of human connection, and in the end, I knew that would make all the difference. The weeks following our awakening passed in a blur of medical tests, government interviews, and clandestine lessons with Marie. Sarah and I found ourselves walking a tightrope between two worlds, the normal, everyday reality we had always known, and the hidden realm of magic and shadows we had unwittingly stumbled into. It was a crisp autumn morning when we finally returned home. The familiar sight of our little house both comforting and somehow alien after everything we'd been through. The music box lay silent on the mantel, its ornate surface no longer pulsing with malevolent energy, but I couldn't bring myself to touch it. Sarah paused in the doorway, her eyes scanning the room, as if seeing it for the first time. It feels strange, doesn't it? She said softly, like we've been gone for years instead of weeks. I nodded, wrapping an arm around her waist. I know what you mean. Everything looks the same, but we're not the same, she finished for me. We spent the day cleaning, airing out the musty rooms, trying to reclaim some sense of normalcy. But as night fell, bringing with it long shadows and unfamiliar creaks, the unease we'd both been holding at bay came rushing back. "Daniel?" Sarah called from the kitchen, her voice tight with tension. "Can you come here for a second?" I hurried to her side, my heart racing. What is it? What's wrong? She pointed to the window, her hand shaking slightly. Look, tell me you see it too. At first I saw nothing but our darkened backyard. Then a flicker of movement caught my eye. A shadow, darker than the surrounding night, seemed to detach itself from a tree and glide across the grass. I see it, I whispered, instinctively pulling Sarah closer. What do we do? Sarah took a deep breath, visibly steeling herself. What Marie taught us. Protection spell, remember? Together, we began to chant the words Marie had drilled into us, our voices growing stronger as we felt the energy building between us. A soft, blue-white light emanated from our joined hands, spreading outward to encompass the house. The shadow creature outside hissed, recoiling from the barrier of light. It circled the house once, twice, searching for a way in. Finding none, it let out a screech of frustration and dissolved into the night. We stood in silence for a long moment, the residual energy of the spell tingling on our skin. Well, Sarah said finally, a hint of her old humor creeping into her voice. I guess those lessons paid off. I managed a weak chuckle, the adrenaline slowly fading. Yeah, I guess so. But Sarah, what are we going to do? We can't live like this, constantly on guard against things that go bump in the night. She turned to face me, her expression serious. We'll figure it out, Daniel. We have to. For now, let's just try to get some sleep. Sleep, however, proved elusive. We lay in bed, both hyper-aware of every sound, every shadow. Just as I was finally drifting off, a sharp knock at the door jolted us both awake. Who could that be at this hour? Sarah whispered, fear evident in her voice. I glanced at the clock. 3:17 a.m. The witching hour, a part of my mind supplied unhelpfully. Stay here, I told Sarah, grabbing the baseball bat we now kept by the bed. I'll check. Heart pounding, I made my way downstairs. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. Taking a deep breath, I called out. Who's there? Daniel? It's Tom. Please, I need your help. Confused and wary, I opened the door to find our neighbor standing on the porch, his face pale and drawn in the porch light. Tom, what's going on? Are you okay? He shook his head, his eyes wild. No, I'm not okay. I'm seeing things, Daniel. Hearing things. Ever since I woke up from that coma, it's like the world isn't right anymore. Please, you have to help me understand what's happening. I hesitated, torn between the desire to help our friend and the need to protect our secret. Before I could decide, Sarah appeared beside me, wrapping a robe tightly around herself. Tom, she said gently, come inside. We'll make some tea and talk. As we sat around the kitchen table, steaming mugs in hand, Tom poured out his story. He spoke of strange dreams that felt more real than reality, of shadows moving when they shouldn't, of whispers in empty rooms. Am I going crazy? He asked, his voice cracking. Carol thinks I am. She's talking about having me committed. Sarah and I exchanged a look, having a silent conversation. Finally, I sighed and turned back to Tom. You're not crazy, Tom. What you're experiencing, it's real. And you're not alone. Over the next hour, we told him everything. The true nature of the curse, our journey into the dream world, the lingering effects of the magic we'd encountered. Tom listened in stunned silence, his tea growing cold and forgotten. So all of this, he said when we'd finished, gesturing vaguely. It's all real? Magic, curses, shadow creatures? I nodded solemnly. I know it's a lot to take in. Believe me, we're still struggling with it ourselves. Tom ran a hand over his face, looking suddenly older and very tired. What do we do now? How do we, protect ourselves? Sarah leaned forward, her expression compassionate but firm. We can teach you, Tom, the basics at least. Protection spells, how to shield your mind. It won't make the supernatural go away, but it will give you some control. And Carol? Tom asked, his voice small. What do I tell her? I sighed, remembering our own struggles with this very question. That's up to you, Tom. Some people, They're not ready to know about this world. It might be kinder to keep her in the dark, at least for now. Tom nodded slowly, absorbing our words. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, he stood to leave. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For telling me the truth, for not thinking I'm crazy. I don't know what I would have done if—" Sarah hugged him tightly. "You're not alone in this, Tom. Remember that." After Tom left, Sarah and I sat in weary silence, the events of the night weighing heavily on us. "It's spreading, isn't it?" Sarah said finally. "The awareness, the sensitivity to the supernatural. It's not just us." I nodded grimly. "Looks that way. Marie warned us this might happen. The curse affected everyone it touched, even if they weren't fully trapped by it." Sarah's eyes met mine, determination shining through her exhaustion. "Then we need to be ready, to help them, to teach them. We can't let them go through this alone." As if in response to her words, my phone buzzed with a text from Marie. "Time for your next lesson. Be at the cabin by noon. Bring the music box." I showed Sarah the message, a mix of anticipation and dread churning in my stomach. "I guess our education continues," I said wryly. Sarah nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. "I suppose it does. You know, when I married you, I didn't expect battling supernatural forces to be part of the deal." I couldn't help but chuckle. "No refunds, I'm afraid. You're stuck with me in all this craziness." Her smile widened as she leaned in to kiss me softly. "Wouldn't have it any other way." As we prepared to leave for Marie's cabin, gathering supplies and steeling ourselves for whatever new challenges awaited us, I found myself reflecting on how much our lives had changed. The curse of the music box had brought us to the brink of losing everything, but in breaking it, we had gained a new purpose, a new understanding of the world and our place in it. The music box lay silent, its curse broken, but its presence was a constant reminder of the power we had unleashed, the responsibility we now bore. As I carefully wrapped it in a protective cloth, I couldn't shake the feeling that our journey was far from over. Sarah's hand on my shoulder brought me back to the present. "Ready?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I nodded, drawing strength from her presence. "Ready. Whatever comes next, we face it together." As we drove away, our little house growing smaller in the rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of movement at the edge of the woods. For a moment I could have sworn I saw the witch's face, her enigmatic smile promising that our story was far from over. But this time, the sight didn't fill me with dread. Instead, I felt a surge of determination. We had faced the impossible and survived. We had chosen love over fear, sacrifice over selfishness. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dark forces might threaten us, we would face them. Because in the end, that's what it means to be truly awake, to see the world in all its beauty and terror, and to choose every day to fight for the light. As we turned onto the winding road that led to Marie's cabin, I squeezed Sarah's hand, feeling the pulse of magic that now flowed between us. Our awakening had brought knowledge, power, and danger, but it had also shown us the true strength of human connection, of love in the face of darkness. And in the end, I knew that would make all the difference.